So this week, the jury in Los Angeles, where the trial was moved because of all the publicity in the Bay Area, found that Mehserle was guilty, but of a lesser charge of involuntary manslaughter. In other words, the jury believed that Mehserle had not intended to kill Grant, as the prosecution had contended. They'd been seeking a second-degree murder charge. So on Friday's Air Talk, we opened up the phone for listeners, and we talked about how difficult it is to prosecute a case like that against a former officer. There was a real mix in what the listeners thought about whether the officer knew he was grabbing his handgun versus his taser. There were those who said, look, you know, the taser is about half as heavy as the handgun, and it's even holstered at a different spot on his waistband, so there's no way he possibly could have been confused. Furthermore, there were those listeners who said that Grant had already been subdued, so there was no justification for even using a taser in the first place. But on the other side, we had listeners who said, you know, clearly he didn't intend to kill the person, you know, with a crowd of people standing around. That wasn't what he meant to do, and that in all the confusion, that it was an error that he made, a horrific error, but nonetheless a mistake on his part, and accepted his argument. I know that on the website there have been some responses from members of law enforcement. One of the things we hear time and time again when we talk about these stories are how we, as members of the general public, can't imagine the kinds of intensity of these circumstances where an officer fears for his or her life, and the split-second decision that they have to make, and the risk that they take if they don't pull a weapon or don't fire the weapon in the heat of a moment like this. But, you know, on the other side are those who say, even from the law enforcement community, that, you know, too frequently officers allow these kinds of circumstances to escalate, and that they don't exercise a proper degree of caution. The biggest criticisms of former Officer Mehserle and his conduct came from people who felt that you know, Grant hadn't posed a problem in the arrest, that he clearly was subdued, and that he was simply targeted, that for whatever reason, their view is the officer must have gotten angry about it, that there was animus, and that he just totally lost his cool, knowingly pulled his handgun and fired. And so that's the feeling of the supporters of Grant. Furthermore, there was a lot of negative feeling about the fact that there were no African Americans on the Los Angeles jury. And there's no evidence that there was an effort to systematically exclude black jurors. But one of the problems Los Angeles faces is that, you know, there's been significant black flight in LA to areas like the Inland Empire and the high desert. So we've seen, as a percentage of the population, the African American segment of the population decline. And also, you know, you have registered voters as well as motorists who, you know, that's the pool from where you get people serving jury duty.